But yeah, my beats, they are hard.
All right, welcome to another edition of the BCSN SportsWrap. Bryan Fulford and A.D. Drew here. And A.D., it's good to talk to you. It's been a minute since we had a chance to actually do a podcast, my friend. You've been out there working hard, and I feel like I've been sloughing, doing other stuff, but I'm very appreciative of all the stuff that you're doing to keep us moving.
Well, believe it or not, Bryan, people don't realize we do have personal lives also. So, welcome back from your extended Thanksgiving break.
Right. Well, look, it's not like I've been slouching doing nothing, but compared to you, I've been doing nothing. There you go.
That's all right, but you've been answering my phone calls and texts, which is the most important thing.
There you go. Exactly. I haven't been leaving you out to dry. Exactly. Yeah. So appreciate you. I want to remind everybody, if you are following, watching us, I don't even know how this is going to go out, this episode. We may do, this may just be audio, so you may be listening. I don't know if you're actually watching. That's all post-production decisions that we're going to make. So however you're consuming this podcast, let me just run through it all here. Of course, the Black College Sports Network on Instagram, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at MyBCSN1. Of course, the website is up, mybcsn.net.
New and improved.
The new updated version of the site, and it is a great one-stop shop where you can go and find out everything that's going on with every athletic program, every HBCU athletic program you can find from our website. Everything that's going on, including
JUCOs, HBCU
okay.
JUCOs.
See, I didn't even know we were doing that. Look at that, even JUCOs. We've also got the links there to all of our shows, this show, as well as Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Dr. Cavill, Mike Washington, Charles Bishop. You can catch all of their shows. And everything we do, of course, on YouTube, MyJBN Online. Of course, we are part of the Jericho Broadcast Networks. Look, the reason I wanted us to get together, Drew, is we have not had a chance in the first couple of weeks. You and I are basketball guys, and we have not had a chance to actually spend even 30 minutes on wax. We've talked about a lot over the last 2 weeks, but on wax, we have not done anything. So I figure time is short today. So I said, hey, let's get into some basketball stuff because hell, there's not much news from other sports really to talk about. Let me just go real quick. First impressions. Let's see. The season started for Division I on the day before Thanksgiving. Obviously, the NAIAs. Let me go back. The NCAA Division I and II started the day before Thanksgiving, right?
I think there may have been a Division II, Lincoln, PA, who actually played a game or two before Thanksgiving.
Really? Okay.
In the Division II level, Division I, you're correct, did not begin until the day before Thanksgiving, and NAIA started, I believe, at the beginning of November when they were actually able to start competition.
Right, the beginning of November. Okay, so that's how it started, and I know for me, obviously the biggest story. I think 1A, 1B has been the fact that there are consistent changes happening almost on a weekly basis with games.
Weekly?
Well,
sometimes it was daily, hourly.
sure, right. That you're right, and that's been happening since the very first week of the season. I think since the very first week 1, I guess you'd say this is actually week 3, technically, correct? We would call this week 3.
Of Division 1.
Division 1. So week 1 started with a bang in HBCUs when FAMU's women decided to opt out of their entire season. So that was the big bang that started the week. And then I think there was another school that Maryland Eastern Shore, I think it was.
Correct.
That opted out that same week. Maybe
in addition to Bethune already opting out.
Right. They had opted out like the week before. So all that was going on, putting the MEAC schedule in flux, all the work that they had did, they just basically had to tear all that up and just start brand new. We get to that in a second because I saw that they just released some updated schedules. And, hey, kudos to all the teams in the SWAC. They're just moving on. They're just moving right along. Obviously, Alabama State decided not to do any non-conference.
And you've had a couple of teams who've had to start and stop in the SWAC already.
Right. You've had that happen. You've had a lot of cancellations. I think you've had a few teams. I think Texas Southern, last I checked, and I was just pulling up their site to see, I think Texas Southern's women have had at least 4 games, if I'm not mistaken, canceled on them at the start of this season. It's just like, hey, we got a game. Nope, we don't have a game. We got a game. Nope, don't have a game. It's been all over the place. So, I mean, that's like 1A, and we're just learning to deal with it. Look, nobody's going to fuss at anybody. It just is what it is right now. And then the other thing is that you don't have any fans in the stands. I shouldn't say that, because in some places there have been a few fans in attendance in a few places, but for the most part, most games are being played without fans.
No HBCU, to my knowledge, is allowing fans in their facility. Now, when we're on the road, I say we being HBCUs, yes, there may be some fans if we're on the road against a historically white college or a university. That's number one. And Brian, you also failed to mention some of the Division II schools that have opted out of playing.
Yeah, I hadn't got to those two, but go ahead. Break that down for the Division II.
Some of those in the SIAC, I know Clark Atlanta and Lane have opted out in the SIAC. There are teams.
So Clark and Lane are completely out, men and women?
Yes.
Okay, that's breaking
men and women.
I hadn't heard that.
There are teams in the CIAA that have opted out or opting out. I believe it was maybe one of the Virginia schools. I don't have it in front of me. So they have opted out. Lincoln of Missouri has already played multiple games. And on the NAIA level, the teams in the Red River Athletic Conference, which is interesting. The HBCUs in the Red River Athletic Conference, which there are 5, have not played. The remaining 7 teams in the Red River Athletic Conference have played at least one game thus far. And in the GCAC, the Gulf Coast Athletic Conference, you have Edward Waters, who just tipped off this weekend. Talladega has played games. Xavier has started and stopped. Dillard's women have played. And Philander is leading everybody, having played 10 games on the men's side. And then you've got the irony of them all, Florida Memorial, when I say irony, because they had to stop their football program. They've actually—
and volleyball.
Fall sports. We'll just say fall sports. They've actually competed in, I believe, the men 7. I believe both teams are competing in at least 7 games. I think the women, one of them has 1 game more than the other one, but they've competed in at least 6 or 7 games to this point. So I guess the lessons learned from fall sports have helped them transition and get the winter sports in.
Well, I feel like for people who wanted to say that the teams who opted out were courageous and brave, and more courageous and brave than the teams that are choosing to play, or that the leadership for those teams who opted out is any better than the teams that are opting in. I just find that, it's like the contradiction there is so glaring. I shouldn't have even just brought it up, because it's like, let it be. It's like, okay, no one really, as I guess what I'm trying to say, Drew, the contradiction in indoor sports that opted out, volleyball, to sports that are playing basketball, and they're both indoors. The only difference is maybe the people. I mean, someone may go back and say, oh, well, there's a few more cases nowadays that are happening than maybe in a month. Look, this thing has not slowed down.
It's sped up, if anything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if that's 100% accurate, because that you may be doing more testing. Anyway, it just excuse me. It just seems like,
speaking of Corona.
Oh, wow. It just seems like the contradiction is just flat out. So I'm just going to continue to applaud the teams that are playing, and I'm going to feel bad for the teams that aren't playing, because anyone who, and really, hey, I'm on that side where I'm rooting for this thing to finish. I'm rooting for teams to get to the finish line. I'm rooting for conference play to start in January. I'm rooting for you to get to your conference tournament. I'm rooting for you to play postseason tournaments. And I'm not going to be that, and I want you to check me on this. I promise I'm not going to be the guy that say, I told you so. Just like I hope that there are no people out there when things go south, that you're not out there saying, I told you so. But I really feel like there were people out there saying, I told you so.
Hey, Bryan, I'm going to tell you what the big difference is between the winter sports and the fall sports, Bryan.
Yeah.
Economics and Title IX.
Okay.
All right. The economics portion of it. Football, you're talking with coaching staff and trainers and everything else, you're talking 80 to 100 people that have to get tested multiple times per week. Throw in a volleyball team of a staff and players of 15. Add in your cross country and I believe that's pretty much all you're going to have, because there's only one or two schools that play soccer in the fall. But you're talking at least 150 athletes that would have to get tested. And remember, if you offer it on the men's side, you have to offer something on the women's side, which with the cost of just football, just by the sheer numbers, if you can't offer football, it's got to be equal.
Right.
According to Title IX. Now, basketball, with players and staff and everything else, you're only talking about 40 people combined. 20 men, 20 women. That's players, coaches, and support staff, 20 to 25 per team. You're talking 40, 45 people total. So it's a lot easier and a lot more economical to test 40 people than 150, Bryan. And that's what a lot of this has come down to, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. Let's before we get into quickly to our polls, players of the week and things of that nature, let's talk about storylines, things that we've seen, games, players, things that have happened over the past couple of weeks. We'll just kind of go back and forth from maybe the first 2 weeks into this week. I'll start. The first thing that popped into my head as I was mentioning this was Alabama A&M Bulldogs being RPI rated the number one team in college basketball, men's college basketball Division I. Now that was last week, and I was going to take a quick look and see if they are still rated number one according to the RPI from that was on CBS. And of course, now this was last week, Drew, right? That we saw this?
Yes.
Yeah. So now, correct me if I'm wrong, has Alabama A&M played a game? Not
to my knowledge. They're still 1-0.
Okay. Well, again, they were number one RPI, rated above Gonzaga. That's real. That was real. I even took a screenshot of it. I tweeted it.
And you sent it to me.
Hey, HBCU Sports did an article about it. That was the first place I saw and became aware of it. And so I had to go capture it because I knew once that happened, somebody was going to tweak the formula. That was never going to happen again. And sure enough, I go right now to CBS.com, look at their RPI, and guess who is number one now?
Gonzaga.
Yeah, of course. Gonzaga's 1, Tennessee is 2, Mercer is 3, New Mexico is 4.
When do we get to an HBCU?
Let me do a quick search and find Alabama A&M. Oh,
just any HBCU. I don't care who it is.
Hey, look, somehow Alabama A&M, without even playing a game, dropped from 1 to 24th. Texas Southern happens to be 28th with a record of 2-3. So I think that would be, let me scroll up real quick, see if I see, no, there's no other HBCU. So your top 2 RPI rated HBCU teams, Alabama A&M, who were formerly number 1, and Texas Southern, who comes in at 28th overall.
Now, Bryan, do you think it's just maybe part of the fact that the other teams have played games and that helped their RPI rating, or do you actually think there was an actual tweak of the formula?
Let's look.
Because the more games you play,
Drew, New Mexico has not played a game. Excuse me. New Mexico has played 1 game. You know what their trend is? They trended 349 spots, Drew. So, Drew, you are an expert at RPIs as you help put together our preseason and our current rankings. Please explain RPI and how something like this might happen to the layman. The layperson is probably looking at this like, what in the hell?
RPI during the first month of the season is a garbage stat because RPI factors in such things as wins, losses, strength of schedule, opponent strength of schedule, and a few other things that go into that algorithm. Just losing to the wrong team can give you a good RPI at this time of the season. So it tells you until you get about 10 games in, it's kind of hard to really use RPI as a indicator.
Okay, so that brings me to the BCSN preseason rankings. And
go to the current ranking. Doesn't have to go back to the preseason.
Come on, hold on. We never talked about the preseason. Oh, you just want me to skip right over the preseason?
Let's get to the current because we've had another ranking come out since then.
Okay, but I feel like I have to set it up with the preseason.
Okay, set it up. Make it quick.
I felt I'm not going to pick on you about this. We've had some interesting discussions. All right, preseason rankings. NCAA Division I. Now, look, we did a Division I, Division II, and an NAIA rankings. And explain why we did that, Drew.
Well, the big thing is because of the difference of the level of competition and the scholarship numbers, it's hard to cross compare these teams and come up with a poll that combines all of them and to be fair to the individual teams. So plus it also gives an opportunity for us, instead of having one number 1 team on the men's side and one number 1 team on the women's side, we actually have 6 teams, 3 on the men's side, 3 on the women's side. And our NAIA does include some of the independent schools, the USCAA teams and NCCAA teams also are included in the NAIA poll.
Now, Drew, you're talking to a guy who grew up in Indiana, where for the longest we only had 1 classification of basketball. No matter whether your school had 60 people in it or whether you had 4,500 students, it all came down to 5 players on the court. 5 players on the court, the best 5 win the ball game. So, we didn't factor in all the number of students, the median income of the households, the community population. We didn't factor all that stuff that you folks in other states who have large classifications have. But eventually we sold out. We sold our soul so we could have more winners. And so
and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, at one point in time, at least I can say I went to high school when there was one classification, and I'm damn proud of it. But anyway, I digress. Okay, so our preseason NCAA Division I men's rankings from 1 to 5, or excuse me, from 5 to 1, we had Prairie View at 5, Tennessee State at 4, Texas Southern 3, Hampton 2, Southern preseason ranked number 1. In the Division II for the men, Bowie State at 5, Miles 4, Virginia Union 3, Virginia State 2, Lincoln 1. And the
Lincoln,
NAIA,
Missouri.
I'm sorry.
Lincoln, Missouri.
Yes, that's a great clarification because there is a Lincoln, PA. And in the NAIA, now at the time that we did our preseason, this was based on games that were played through November 25th. So out of the box, this was our first poll for NAIA. Philander Smith was 5, Florida Memorial was 4, Harris-Stowe was 3, Talladega was 2, and at the time they had a record of 5-1, and Xavier, Louisiana was number 1 with a record of 1-1. Okay, so then we moved to our first poll, which came out last week. And I think what we talked about, the rankings, we're going to do at least right now every other weekend. Correct, Drew?
Yeah, up until conference till conference begins. So you'll have bi-weekly polls up until mid-January, starting right around King Day. Then they'll come out every week.
Yeah, so basically we've got in December, we're probably doing about 3 polls.
We've got one more poll coming in December.
Yeah, outside of the one,
outside the one that's current. We have one additional poll which will come out next week, Christmas week.
Okay, so a total of what, 2, 3?
2 in December.
2 in December, and then we'll do 1 in January, I guess?
We'll do 3 in January. We'll do 1 at the beginning of January, and then beginning King Day, the polls will come out every week.
All right, so the last poll that came out last week for Division I men, Howard at the time was number 5, 1-0. Alabama A&M, that team that had an RPI of number 1 in the country, they were only number 4 in our rankings. Southern, winless at 0-3, they were ranked 3. Jackson State, winless at 0-2, they were ranked 2nd. And North Carolina Central at the time, record of 1-1, was number 1. And I know you took a little bit of heat. You took a little bit from the guys over at Dr. Cavill's inside the Sports Lab. Would you care to reply or retort in your polls? Or should I do the
ranking? This is a ranking, not a poll.
Yes.
So the human element is out. Like I said about the RPI, during the first couple of weeks of the season, the rankings may get skewed by who you play and things like that. As you play more games, everything will kind of flatten out, maybe around game 8 or 10.
Is there any consideration for quality of wins? Are wins factored in, quality of wins at all? I mean, do we put more weight? I mean, anybody who would look at our rankings and see a Jackson State and a Southern who were winless ahead of an Alabama A&M and Howard who opened their season with wins.
A win. Okay.
And you know what's funny?
Let's take this, and I'll try to get this as quickly and brief as possible. For a Division I team, a win versus another Division I team that's ranked ahead of you in the total NCAA rankings will net you more points towards your ranking than a win versus a NCAA team that's ranked below you. And a loss versus a team, and sometimes a loss versus a team that's ranked significantly ahead of you is better than a win against a team behind you. So if you lose to a top 50 program and you're ranked 200 and you lose to a top 50 program, that's a better quality loss than say at 200 you beating team number 350 as far as your rating scale goes. Yes, you get points for the win, but you get more points for beating a team that's equal or better than you. That's number one. Number two, when you go back and look at some of these schedules and some of these teams they play, some of these wins that some of these teams have are against Division II and NAIA teams. So those wins do not rate as high as your competition against Division I team. Now, for a Division II team or NAIA team, you're gonna get more points if you play a Division I team. It's kind of the same thing they do when they go and put them in the regions and the polls in the Division II and NAIA.
This is why, see, it's things like this is why I don't like preseason polls. You remember we had the discussion about football polls and football rankings and all this stuff. We should do one. Everyone else is doing one. Maybe we shouldn't. I kept saying, let the first month of the season play out before we put anything out there, because then we can truly say we've seen 3 to 4 games of these teams and we can truly evaluate, because teams are not who they were from last year.
Yes.
And I'll hold on to my flag and say I feel the same is true for rankings. But hey, it's good conversation, and so it is what it is.
Let's quickly hit Division II and NAIA before we jump over to the women.
Yeah, because nobody changed in Division II, correct?
Yes, nobody changed in Division II, so let's hit NAIA.
So the NAIA jump. Now, Xavier, who was number 1, dropped all the way down to number 5. Florida Memorial, who was
4, stayed at 4.
4, they stayed at 4. Talladega, who was 2, dropped to 3 with no wins or losses. No wins or losses. Harris-Stowe somehow switched places with them. Harris-Stowe moved from 3 to 2. Same record, didn't do anything, but somehow they moved up. And here's our RPI again. I'm not going to say anything. And then Philander Smith, who was 5, jumped all the way up to number 1 with a pair of wins, 4 and 4. Okay, go, Drew. Explain.
The opponent's opponent factored into those switches.
Okay, the opponent's of interesting.
Yes.
The opponent's opponent. All right, it is what it is. That's all I can say, and we'll keep moving. Before we jump over to the women, while we're talking about the men. So Drew, when I look at some of the men's games over the past couple of weeks, I think about the wins and the losses, and there have been a few scattered wins, especially this past week. I mean, this past week you had 1, 2, 3, 4 schools, actually 3 school get wins versus HWCUs. I got to get used to that. I'm so used to calling PWIs. I'm getting used to the whole HWCUs. And then we had the one HBCU versus HBCU matchup between Hampton and Norfolk State. But the rest of them are losses. Now, some pretty significant blowouts. and
one led to one of the powerhouses decided to shut their program down, even though it was a loss.
Who was that? I missed that.
Duke.
Oh, okay, yeah. So obviously we're talking a couple weeks ago, right? Coppin State played real well against Duke, right? Now,
which was a forecast of them losing to
Illinois the next couple nights.
Yes.
Yeah. So
then Coach K pulled the plug.
Right. So obviously, Duke has won 2 games against like Coppin and some other school, but in between those games, they lost to Michigan State. Then they lost to Illinois, 2 who were both top 10. And then, Coach K once again came out expressing concerns about COVID and playing. And then he pulled.
Does he have those concerns if Duke is 5-0?
Hey, look, I applaud the coach from Alabama for saying it. Well, actually, technically he was cool about the way he did it. he somebody asked the question, or no, he asked the question. The reporter answered it, and he said, "Oh, I'm glad you said it, so I didn't have to say it." But really, you know, that was the down and dirty way of saying it without saying it, right?
Right.
That was genius on his part, and it makes you wonder if I heard someone else say that guy must have been sitting at the lunch table with Nick Saban, you know, and it's like, you know, hey, look at us, we're playing football. What is Coach K complaining about, you know? And that guy must have been drinking the Kool-Aid, like, yeah, I'm in Alabama, I can talk, I can stick my chest out and talk a little smack too. But anyway, some of the losses, Drew. Look, some of the losses have been, and they're always bad. I mean, this year is no different, it seems like, than other years where teams have been getting beat by. I mean, you had one team, Mississippi Valley State, got beat by more points than they scored, and then the next night, I think they went from losing by 82, then I lost by 60. You've had teams lose by 50, 40. And that's been happening.
That's no different. That's the same thing as when FAMU goes to Ohio State and lose 73-0.
Exactly. Yeah. Okay.
So that hasn't changed. What you have seen though is a lot more of our HBCUs playing close to some of these traditional Power 5 powerhouses. Number one, and number two, Brian, have you noticed who's been getting the phone calls when the historically white schools have had COVID issues? Call your nearest HBCU. Call your local HBCU. Georgia, call FAMU. UAB, call Tuskegee. And we've seen this throughout the, throughout
the first couple of weeks. Yeah.
I believe it was it Jackson State that picked up a game against Mississippi State in Mississippi?
Well, this past week, Jackson State men played both Mississippi State and Mississippi on the road.
And those were not scheduled.
No. Well, how about this? How about the whole Stanford, who happened to be kicked out of their own county and pretty much their whole state? Exactly. So they happen to be over on the East Coast. They were in North Carolina. Yeah, they happened to call up A&T, Coach Will Jones, and say, hey, would you want to play? We'll come to you. And it's like, whoa, Stanford's coming to an HBCU to play. Great. You know, unfortunately, there's no crowd, but, you know, and I think Stanford may have won by like 20, 25 points, maybe even 30 or so. But, you know, that was the historic first Power 5 traveling to an HBCU. And I think we were waiting until January for the Notre Dame traveling to Howard game. Yeah. You know,
and let's get one on the women's side also. UAB, Edward Waters, in a matchup of father versus daughter, whereas Paul Bryan, who was athletic director at Edward Waters, and his daughter, who's on the sports staff at University of Alabama, Birmingham, they matched up on the women's side in basketball the day before Thanksgiving.
I was going to say that was UAB's first game of the season, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So you've had here's what I guess what I see, and I can briefly touch on the couple of the winners from this past week. You've had we can't really look at the games against the Power Fives. I mean, FAMU versus Oklahoma, Oregon. At what point do you go from being disappointed at the result to pleased with the big outcome of the loss? I mean, if you saw what North Carolina Central did in playing to within a 6-point game with North Carolina, you know, it makes you wonder, you know, hey, I wish more teams could play at that pace. Maybe that's not a very good North Carolina team. Maybe it's a good North Carolina Central team. I don't know. It's hard to really evaluate until you see what they do the next game, right?
I'm going to tell you what some of the difference is, and I saw this when I read the article about the UAB Tuskegee game. You know, guard play among HBCUs is as good, if not better, than you get with the historically white schools. Where they tend to be better than us is post play.
Good
So
point.
if you want to run and gun with your average to good HBCU, and that's not your style, good luck, because the HBCU can and will pull the upset.
That's
Now,
a good point.
If you're gonna pound it down to that 7-footer that you got, when you know the tallest player on my team is 6'7", 6'8", you should beat me.
That's a good point that you bring up, because I do recall seeing, when I looked at the comparison of the North Carolina and North Carolina Central post players, you could see a difference in the size and build, but the guard play definitely was stronger. I mean, Central's got a kid, CJ Kaiser. I mean, we know he's coming into the MEAC as one of the top guards. He's legit, man. He's really a quality player. We got to mention this past week, Anthony Tark, Coppin State with an 86-80 win over UNC Greensboro. Anthony Tark puts up something that he put up a stat line which hadn't been done since 2011, where he filled up the stat sheet, right? 34 points, 10 rebounds, 8 assists, 4 blocks, 4 steals.
2 assists on the triple-double.
Yeah, hadn't been done since 2011. And I think it was the blocks and steals were those stats that sort of made it, that unique stat line, which hadn't been done since 2011. And they got the win, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Morgan State beat Iona like 83-72. Morgan State's off to a good start, I believe. UAPB, after 4 bad losses, finally gets a win over Arkansas State for their first win of the season. And, an interesting stat, Drew, before we jump to the women, that Morgan State game, Morgan State shot 11 of 19. That's 57.7% from the three-point line. UAPB, 10 of 20 from the three-point line. You see, like you just said, you want to get a win, you knock down some jump shots, and, you might actually be able to get a dub.
Yes, guard play.
Let's jump over to the women, okay? The women. The most recent poll for the women that you put out for Division I, from 5 to 1, you've got Howard at 5, Alabama A&M at 4, Southern, who are 0-3, they are 3rd, Jackson State 0-2, and number 1 is North Carolina Central. North Carolina Central was not even in the preseason rankings, falling out. Texas Southern, who I don't even think they played. They played 1 game, but
Texas Southern got caught by COVID.
Yeah,
as
exactly.
Far as games played.
And again, these rankings. These are based on they came out a week ago, December 6th.
Yeah.
So I'm sure
Expect
Texas
Howard to move up tremendously.
Oh, sure,
With their wins that they had this week.
Right. No doubt. Division II, 5 to 1. Johnson C. Smith, Benedict, Lincoln, PA, Fayetteville State, Virginia Union.
Expect Lincoln, PA to move up.
Yeah. And NAIA, from 5 to 1, you've got Xavier, Dillard, Philander Smith, Florida Memorial, and Talladega. Any predictions on what might happen on that?
Dega hasn't. I don't think Dega hasn't played. I don't think Dega plays again until after the holiday. Florida Memorial has about 3 or 4 games. Has like 2 games remaining before the Christmas break. They could possibly overtake them. Philander's played a couple of games. Don't remember how they've done since then. Dillard and Xavier do not come back until January. Edward Waters, with a couple of wins, could crack the top 5. They've played a couple of games thus far.
Right. So for the women this past week, probably the team of the week is easily got to be Howard. Howard's women got to be the team of the week right now. The hottest team. They came back down 23 on Friday and beat LaSalle 75-73, I think was the score. Yeah. 75-73. And then on Sunday, they were down 14. And these are all second half, probably either late third, early fourth quarter. They were down 14 to George Washington, and they ended up winning that game 63-53. So two comeback wins for Howard's women. And if I'm not mistaken, the Lady Bison are sitting at 3-0 overall record right now. 3-0. Morgan State's women are 2-0. And Delaware State finally got a game that they won this past week, 1-0. It was actually a pretty good week for those three teams. And I think Jackson State finally got a win. Jackson State women finally got a win, I think, against Nicholls State. That was on Friday. Grambling State's women finally got a win against UL Monroe, if I'm not mistaken, earlier this week. Drew, let's get into the players of the week while we got a few minutes left before we got to sign out of this very short, abbreviated edition of the Sports Wrap. You guys are like, what? You guys are signing off? Yeah, this is a short version. This is not a long, extended form version. Yeah. So, Drew, go through the players of the week for this upcoming week, week number 3.
Let's start off with the men on Division I level. It's going to be Anthony Tark. You've already mentioned his stat line: 34, 10, 8, 4, and 4. Two assists short of a triple-double versus UNC Greensboro. On the Division II level men's side is going to be Greg Boyd from Tuskegee University, 20 points, 6 rebounds versus UAB. And those 6 rebounds, Brian, keep in mind, he's a 5'9" guard.
Okay.
With 6 rebounds.
Okay, good clarification. Thank you.
Yes. And 5'9" point guard, to be exact. And on the NAIA side, you have Maurice Johnson from Edward Waters University, who's also the GCAC Player of the Week with his 27-5 rebounds and 2 assists versus Weber International. On the women's side, you have Kaya Creek from Howard. Those 2 wins over LaSalle and George Washington that you just mentioned, Brian. She had 14 and 10 versus LaSalle, 23 and 5 versus George Washington. On the Division II side, you're going to have Kiera York from Albany State University. She had 15 and 7 and a loss to Georgia Southwestern as Albany State opened up their schedule this week. And on the NAIA side, you have LaQuanza Glover of Edward Waters. She had 12 points, 14 rebounds, and 2 assists versus Weber International, along with the block and 3 steals in a close loss to Weber International on this past Saturday. So, and then she also had 8 and 15 in a exhibition against North Florida on Sunday. So there you have them, Brian. Those were the players of the week.
Okay, so congratulations to our men and women players of the week, Division I, Division II, and NAIA. Any final thoughts, Drew, on this upcoming week? I know this is, like I said, this is a lot shorter version than normal, and I know if we get a chance here this week, we'll maybe do something with a little more deep dive. But I just wanted us to kind of get together. We haven't had a chance to really talk in depth, and I guess it is what it is, because there are games that aren't being played right now. There are games that are, and it's just kind of it's a mix, prop to those teams who are actually getting games played
and trying to get them played.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
And a lot of times these cancellations aren't the fault of the one team. It's the other team or stuff that's happening. One thing you shouldn't have to worry about are outbreaks on campus anymore, because most campuses are closed. The only people who are remaining on campus are the athletes at this point in time, usually. Congratulations to all those who survived their finals. We were college students once. That's the best thing that I can say is you survived your final. Hopefully you got the grade that you wanted and that you deserved out of your class. And Bryan, do you know this weekend on the Black College Sports Network on all of our media platforms, including the app, the website, and all of our social media, we will begin our recap of 2020 with some of our best of shows, Bryan. We're going to go back and go with some of the best of SportsWrap shows of the year on Saturday, followed Sunday by some of the basketball games of the year thus far. Then next week, we're going to come back with some of the best of inside the HBCU Sports Lab, along with some more basketball games as we get into that post-Christmas week. And then we should have some content coming out every day as we pull out our archives and not only go with some of the best of 2020, but some of the best of BCSN classics, as we like to call them.
All right. Well said. Looking forward to that stuff coming out. Hopefully folks will get a chance to check the different shows out. And we want to encourage everyone, again, make sure you're following us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at MyBCSN1. You can follow Drew on Twitter at BCSNDrew. You can find me at DRB365. Make sure you visit mybcsn.net. That's the webpage. Any athletic program, any HBCU athletic program you're looking for, you can find that in the news and notes section. Yep. You can also find our rankings there, and we're just going to continually add things. And so you're going to see more things from us on the webpage, and more stories, more content, more video packages. And
you can go there and find the schedule for what time your favorite interview or your favorite game is going to air this Saturday or Sunday. It's in the From the Minds of the BCSN section of the webpage.
Okay. Well said. A continuous work in progress. Real quick, I got to give you a shout out for the interviews you did, the basketball preseason interviews. All of those are available on our podcast, as well as on YouTube and Facebook and the app.
And the website.
Of course, all of those pages. Of course, the podcasts are available everywhere you get podcasts. I mean, Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts. Just do a search just do a search on BCSN SportsWrap, and that's where you can find those podcasts and all of those shows. A lot of those interviews Drew did, about a good 25-30-minute interview with a lot of the head coaches. Any one particular interview that kind of, I hate to, signal it out, but anybody that just comes to mind off the top of your head that, if you say, hey, go really check this one out, that I really enjoyed the most?
I give you
all of them. So
yeah, but I gave you two. One actually was the last one I just did. Coach Greg Standback of Florida Memorial, the head women's basketball coach. The last couple of minutes, we kind of got off on a tangent and talked about why we at the BCSN do what we do. And it was a straight tangent. It had nothing to do with the conversation that we were having, but he was thanking us and talking about some of the publicity that they're getting from us. And then we just kind of went back and forth with some things on why we do what we do and why they, why they support us and why we support them. And then the one with Coppin State's SID.
Oh, the SID. Okay.
Yes, with Coppin State's SID. And that was also because that was refreshing. Someone who's in a similar role that covers a team who's able to give, even though he's paid by that school, that was Coppin State, that was Norfolk State. I apologize. But he's still able to give a little bit of an outsider view of what he sees their basketball team as.
Okay, so that's a interview with Norfolk State's SID.
Correct. Those are the two that kind of were different than the rest of them.
Yeah. Okay. Good deal. Good shout out. And we want to definitely thank all of those coaches who were a part of that preseason run that we did there of different coaches, and that was some great work that Drew did. Very time consuming.
And we still have more to come.
Oh, we've got more to come. Well,
we've got coaches that we've been emailing back and forth. Just schedules have not lined up yet.
Okay, great. Yes. Well, again, all of those you can find on podcast form. You can find them in video form. If you haven't downloaded the JBN app, just go to your Apple Store, Google Store, search my BCSN or my JBN. That's where you can find the app. I feel like I'm going to start getting a read sheet for all the promos. Did I miss anything? I feel like I talked about and promoted everything that we have? Probably not enough. Go to the website again, mybcsn.net.
Just go to the website and everything is there. It's user friendly.
All right. I got to make sure what we do is next time we do breaks, I'll have to do one set of mentions, then one break, and another set and another break. Yes. Do it like that. All right.
Let's get out of here, Brian.
What's that?
Let's get out of here.
Yeah. Hey, a very short version of the BCSN Sports Wrap with A.D. Drew. That's him. I'm Brian Fulford. Again, at BCSN Drews, where you can find him. At DRB365 is where you can find me. Appreciate you dealing with all the technical snafus and anything that you hear that's inconsistent or sounds weird. Look, we just put this one together because we needed to get it done. All right. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. However you consume us. Let's enjoy basketball. Stay safe out there. Mask up wherever, whenever you can. And happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Happy Kwanzaa. All that good stuff that's coming up.
Feliz Navidad.
Feliz Navidad, of course. And happy Hanukkah. We just happen to have some Jewish folks out there in the middle of Hanukkah. So happy Hanukkah to you. All right, that's going to do it. For Drew, I'm Brian. Thanks for watching and listening to the BCSN Sports Wrap. We are out of here. Peace out.
Holla.
But my beats, they are hard.